Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, before we proceed, I would like to remind you that the virtual mini plenary is deemed to be in the precincts of Parliament and thus constitutes a meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition to the rules of virtual sittings, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, do apply. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges as in the sitting of the National Assembly, and should equally note that anything said in the virtual platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones and only unmute when recognized to speak. This is because the microphones are very sensitive and will pick up noise which might disturb the attention of other members. And when recognized to speak, please unmute your microphone and connect your video. Members may make use of the icons at the bottom of the screens, which is an option that allows a member to put up his or her hand to raise a point of order. The Secretariat will assist me in this regard. When using the virtual system, members are required to refrain or desist from unnecessary points of order or interjections. We shall now proceed to the order, which is vote number 29, Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development Appropriation Bill. I now recognize the Honourable Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. The Honourable Minister.
Unmute your microphone, Honourable Minister.
Honourable Minister, we cannot hear you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please proceed, Honourable Minister.
Chairperson of the session, Honourable Frolic, Honourable Members, Deputy Minister Skwacha, Deputy Minister Kapa, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee and members of the Portfolio Committee of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, members of our statutory boards and councils, leadership of farmers organization, and CEOs of commodity organizations present, farmers and farm workers, senior officials, ladies and gentlemen, Sanmonani. The new normal ushered by COVID-19 has meant that we execute strategies on agricultural production and food security differently. Agriculture has shown buoyance over the past 2 years, growing by 13.4% year-on-year in 2020 and 8.3% in 2021. The employment figures in the sector were at 868,000 in the fourth quarter of 2021, reflecting stability over the past few years. Most agricultural subsectors in South Africa are emerging from one of the best years for the agricultural sector, the 2021 season. Grains, oilseeds, and some fruits such as citrus saw bumper harvest, which boosted export earnings and improved farm income. However, the economic growth experience and the relative stability in employment are in danger of being eroded due to a number of factors, including the geopolitical issues affecting agricultural trade. The current Russia-Ukraine conflict has the potential to scupper our growth, as there are real concerns about its potential impact on escalating food prices, since the two countries are major exporters of grains, oilseeds, fertilizers, and crude oil products to international markets. I've established a sector task team led by the NAMC that is constantly scanning the environment and providing periodic reports on this unfolding situation and the impact on the sector, in particular, the escalation of food prices, animal feed, and fertilizers. Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, the intention of our land and agrarian reform has always been about redressing the inequity in terms of land ownership because of colonial and apartheid policies. We must ensure that land ownership assists us in attaining tenure security for all, empower citizens to participate in the agricultural economy, and ensure integrated rural development. Our interventions in policy, legislation, and programmatic intervention must bring us closer in building an inclusive society without leaving anyone behind. The challenges of poverty, unemployment, and underdevelopment must challenge us to continuously find solutions that can respond to these challenges. Racial discrimination also had a gender dimension. It is for these reasons that women empowerment in both land and agrarian sectors should be integral. The participation of the majority of women in the sector has always been limited to subsistence farming and working in the commercial farms, largely because land access has always been a constraint. Government's intervention in order to correct this situation has been multifold. Firstly, it has been about providing women farmers who are producing for the markets through Female Farmer of the Year. Secondly, it was about allocating women with farms through our proactive land acquisition strategy. Thirdly, it has been through departments' procurement. I wish to table, honorable members, the 2022-23 budget. Let me indicate from the outset that the budget for agriculture, land reform, and rural development is 17.3 billion. A sizable portion of these is for transfers to provincial departments of agriculture, as well as entities. These allocations relate to Ilima Litsima program, which is a conditional grant, comprehensive agricultural support program, comprehensive agriculture extension, Commission on Restitution of Land Rights, Agricultural Research Council, National Marketing Council, as well as Ingonyama Trust Board. I wish to thank the Portfolio Committee for their work in engaging us on our annual performance plan for the year 2022-23, which outlines how we will utilize the allocated budget. Today, we're joining the world in celebrating the inaugural International Plant Health Day, raising awareness on how protecting plant health can help end hunger, reduce poverty, protect biodiversity and the environment, and boost economic development. These objectives are critical for us to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These development goals compel us to have development that is sustainable and inclusive without leaving anyone behind. Chairperson, today also marks a historic moment in South Africa's agricultural sector. Earlier today, we signed the Agriculture Agro-Processing Master Plan together with social partners. This plan is a product of negotiations between government, labor, business, and civil society organizations in the agriculture and agro-processing space. The journey we've undertaken since June 2020 built on the work done since 2001, when we first developed a strategic plan for South Africa's agricultural sector, the sector plan, Operation Pakisa, and the National Development Plan. All of these processes remain important milestones that are aimed at the transformation of the sector, giving us a vision to which we must focus. This master plan is lifting our gaze to imagine the agricultural sector we want in South Africa. We want a prosperous and inclusive agricultural sector that thrives on better utilization of its natural and human resources. Allow me to commend Professor Mzugisi Kobo, together with the National Marketing Council, the research team led by BFAP and CREED, who really worked with us to ensure that we reach this milestone. My appreciation also goes to the leaders and representatives of farmers' organizations, agribusinesses, labor, and government, who have tirelessly worked to ensure that we have a vision and plan that will help us attain a transformed and inclusive sector doing this actually until early morning of today. The process of developing the master plan has emphasized the multifaceted nature of agriculture in society. The representatives were diverse, reflective of all the subsectors of the industry. Such representation also highlighted the upstream and downstream linkages that are embedded in the sector. The master plan development process has once again affirmed the importance of social compacting, as pronounced by President Ramaphosa during his State of the Nation address. It requires commitment, patience, and determination from all those who are involved. It may take longer, however, the fruits derived from such a process are always rewarding. Honorable members, in 2016, we commenced the process of negotiating an e-certification with the Netherlands in order to ease the burden of inspection in support of trade. Working together with industry, we finally launched the e-certification this Monday, the 9th of May, 2022. This digital tool has come at an opportune time, given the COVID-19 pandemic, where inspection across borders has become even more difficult. South Africa now is one of the few countries that will use e-certification for trade. The feature of transformation of agriculture in South Africa remains changing land ownership patterns, the growth of Black commercial farming, and the accumulation of wealth to improve the quality of livelihoods of people directly and indirectly impacted by agricultural initiative. One of the important elements for transforming and inclusive growth will be the use of public-private partnership. Our partnership with Numalax Group on the series Abattoir through its subsidiary company has been one of the most important ones, where we've seen improving the production capacity to 60 tons per ton for the local market. The success of this project gives us lessons on how we can revitalize some of government-defunct programs. Initiatives such as partnership in Agri-Land Solutions PALS, where there is a partnership between emerging and commercial farmers, are showing fruits in addressing binding constraints. The development of the Mkuza siding, which is a transloading facility in support of small-scale sugarcane farmers in Makhathini Flat, is a result of partnership between government, farmers, Transnet, KwaZulu Natal Economic Development Department, Tonga Hewlett, and Santrans. Honorable members, I'm raising these stories as an affirmation of the importance of partnership in resolving our country's challenges. Climate change and biosecurity remains our major concern. Today, it is the day to celebrate, however, one of our very own veterinarian, Dr. Gideon Bruckner, a committed civil servant who served his country and continues to do so, is one who will be honored by the OIE, the World Organization for Animal Health, with a gold medal. This award is in recognition of his excellent contribution to the international veterinary scientific community. As we celebrate our excellence in the veterinary services, we acknowledge the challenge that remains. The foot and mouth disease remains to actually become our challenges. The Ondersteport Biological Product Company also requires our deliberate support to ensure that they complete its GMP facility. At the same time, they increase their capacity and ensure that there's available vaccines at all times. It is important, in my view, Chairperson, and the department, that Ondersteport must be able to give information at a constant as well as, in a transparent manner to producers to know where can they get their vaccines. Chairperson, I know that a number of members of Portfolio Committee have been concerned about this matter, and I share those concerns. The intensity and frequency of extreme weather and climate events on the globe, and particularly in Africa, are expected to increase. We therefore need to continue to strengthen the multi-hazard early warning system of our country. The recent floods experienced in KwaZulu-Natal and Eastern Cape serve as a prime example for the implementation of disaster risk reduction measures. There is an increasing link between climate change and the spread of pests and diseases. Over the past few years, we've been experiencing introduction, establishment, and spread of pests and diseases into new areas. Some of the outbreaks are due to deliberate human intervention. Honorable members, I must hasten to assure you that we have dealt with the foot and mouth in Gauteng and Free State by depopulating affected farms. We're doing so now in the Northwest Province. I wish to thank the livestock industry for working with us in addressing this outbreak. I've also been engaging the Limpopo Province and KwaZulu-Natal to ensure that we address this issue. The task team that I've set up on biosecurity, led by Dr. Mwepudi, Professor Kirsten, Dr. Mokhajane, and Dr. Bruckner, have actually given me their draft report, which we've engaged on, and we will be releasing the final report as soon as is possible. We've had a challenge of brown locusts in our country. As a country, we've experienced swarms of locusts in the provinces of Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, Western Cape, and Free State that we have never seen in decades. This outbreak has had devastating impact on farmers and local communities. We are grateful to Kumba, Iron Ore, Transnet, and other private sector companies that have been able to collaborate with us in the fight against this locust. Investment in agriculture remains important, particularly if we talk about commercialization of Black farmers. I must say that our land development support has actually assisted a number of farmers who are on our plus farms, such as Dan Mosia in Georgina Farm in the Free State, who has now increased his sunflower production to 600 hectares. Another success story is that of Ruzani Sadiki in Thornville Farms in Limpopo, who also have increased his production of sunflower to 974 hectares. But I must also say, while we are happy with these successes, we remain concerned that not all our plus farms as government are farmable. We've therefore resolved that we will need to put basic and necessary infrastructure to make sure that such farms are farmable. Honorable members, last year in our budget debate, we announced that we will open up the application of hemp permits by October 2021. I want to assure you that yes, we have done as we had promised. 31 permits have been issued and we continue to process the rest of the application. In order to ensure an inclusive value chain, we will be working with the ARC to set up demonstration farms in all 9 provinces to ensure education of primary producers on the appropriate production technologies. The Agri-Industrial Fund that we set up last year with IDC has also borne some fruit. We've seen 6 poultry farmers now who have been funded by this facility being able to actually produce about 1.9 million birds per cycle. It is important for me, Chairperson, to indicate the importance of agricultural financing in support of agriculture. It is for this reason that we're supporting the Land and Agricultural Bank Board to make sure that they engage the lenders and find amicable solutions that will assist the land bank to fund again. With regards to market access, we've concluded the signing of citrus and pear protocols to increase export of pears and citrus fruits to the Chinese market. We are also currently negotiating trade protocols with South Korea, Saudi Arabia, and the Philippines. I must say that we have bilateral relations that we've signed with Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire last year. And these agreements, they lay the foundation of technical exchange, but at the same time, improving our capacity to trade with them. Chairperson, this current year, we will examine all the bilateral agreements we've entered into in order to assess the extent to which they can enhance our country's national interest. All of these that I've mentioned before are important to ensure that we succeed, and therefore strengthening our governance and administration remains our important area. Chairperson and honorable members, I present this budget to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next speaker is the Honorable Mandela.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair, the Honorable Minister Titiza, Deputy Ministers, and the Honorable Members. Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends, molweni bantagwethu, goeiedag, and good afternoon to you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I greet you with the greetings of peace and a life of dignity for all. In his State of the Nation's address, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa said that agriculture is one of the industries with the greatest potential of growth. In addition, agriculture can help us to fight hunger and reduce poverty, impact lives and livelihoods by raising incomes and improved food security for 80% of the world's poor who live in rural and peri-urban areas. Agriculture plays a critical role in food security, and 80% of the world's food is grown on small family farms. This is why it is important for government to support all players in the agricultural sector and acknowledge their role in ensuring peace and stability of our beloved South Africa. Since the dawn of our democracy, we have made great leaps and strides to ensure robust and strong agricultural systems and agricultural extension programs that benefit and empower vulnerable small-scale farmers and their families. Honorable House Chair, under the leadership of the Honorable Minister Togo Didiza, the agricultural sector must address increased production in the agricultural sector, as well as improving market access and maintaining existing markets. According to the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, insofar as improving agricultural production levels, we are already facing widespread hunger and poverty in South Africa. And coupled with the realities of global, continental, and regional situations, the task is daunting. This is in addition to the projection that show that feeding a world population of 9.1 billion people in 2050 would require raising the overall food production by some 70% between 2005, 2007, and 2050. Production in the developing countries like South Africa will need to almost double. This implies significant increases in the production of several key commodities. Annual cereal production, for instance, would have to grow by almost 1 billion tons, meat production by over 200 million tons, to a total of 470 million tons in 2050, 72% of which in the developing countries is up from the 58% today. Our approach, honorable members, cannot be accidental and perchance. We must ensure that the control of poverty, hunger, and hopelessness is systematically eradicated. Our agricultural sector as a whole has a pivotal role to play in this regard. Honorable House Chair, we have made great strides in improving access to new markets for our agricultural products. Over the past decade, South Africa's agricultural products gained access into new markets with trading partners globally. This is largely due to the continued support through government interventions and collaborations between the government and the private sector. During this period, trade protocols were negotiated and new markets, especially in Asia, which opened for citrus, palm fruits, and table grapes. China and Vietnam are new lucrative markets for South Africa's table grapes, while citrus and palm markets have been steadily increasing in China and the Philippines. Some of the commodities that penetrated new markets also feature among the prioritized commodities as per the Agricultural and Agro-Processing Master Plan. Commodities in this with potential in the strategic countries in Africa are maize, cane, and beet sugar, as well as fresh apples. However, realization of the full potential requires that trade barriers are resolved. South Africa faces high tariff rates and non-tariff barriers in many countries of strategic importance. In addition to open markets in Asia, South Africa has potential, realistic export opportunities with other African countries under the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. The strategic markets which South Africa can trade in agricultural commodities include East Africa, that being Kenya. In North Africa or the Maghreb region, we need to focus on Morocco, Egypt, Libya, and in West Africa or the ECOWAS, we must be focusing our efforts to Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea, Senegal, Burkina Faso, and Nigeria. Honorable House Chair, we can never realize the two aforementioned strategic goals of the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform, and Rural Development, namely being increasing agricultural production and improved market access without doing more of capacity building in our agricultural sector. The department has made great efforts to ensure that skills development and training in the agricultural sector is viewed as a catalyst, ensuring capacity building for land reform beneficiaries and enhancing the industrial output in the agricultural sector. The skills revolution within the agricultural sector and acts as a clear catalyst towards the development of the agro-processing sector. This would also not be possible without the progress that is being made around infrastructure projects in the agricultural colleges and enhancing our research capacity and capability. Skills and infrastructure are the two catalytic elements to unlock our strategic goals of increased production and improved access to markets. His Excellency President Ramaphosa said that one of the pillars of the economic reconstruction and development is infrastructure-led development, and agriculture infrastructure becomes a key priority in this regard. Honorable House Chair, the department is mandated to ensure that the success of the Agri-BE Fund in order to support Black emerging farmers. We have to do more to ensure greater accessibility in this funding by Black and emerging farmers. We must do more to ensure the success of the Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program. Through this program, government needs to seek to ensure increased the creation of wealth in the rural agricultural communities, create sustainable employment, improve on its foreign trade account, as well as reduce poverty and inequality in the ownership of the land and agricultural enterprise, thereby dismantling the agricultural monopolies. The productivity of the agricultural land and the economic development of our farming communities cannot unfold in the face of hostilities between the farmers, farm workers, and farm dwellers. There is a need to improve on these antagonistic relations and help reach, in the words of His Excellency President Ramaphosa, a new consensus that will drive all stakeholders towards making a contribution in helping to grow our agricultural sector. Together with our sister portfolio committee on employment and labor, we will be conducting a joint oversight operation into the living and working conditions of farm workers, farm dwellers, and the farmers. We hope that at the end of our oversight work, Parliament will deal with all the challenges faced and experienced by our farming and agricultural communities, posing a direct threat to the productivity of those affected farms and their economic livelihoods. In order to realize an increased investment in agriculture, we need to ensure we reduce the high levels of crime and violence in the productive sectors of our agricultural economy. Honorable House Chair, water rights remains a critical challenge to our goal of a transformed agricultural sector. And therefore, we must ensure access to water rights by smallholder producers. This will enable us to enhance agricultural output and address our food security on the sustainable basis. Finally, Honorable House Chair, the recent events of the KwaZulu-Natal floods remind us of the realities of climate change. The impact on our urban communities and rural farmers has been devastating. As this phenomenon became more common, we must seriously look into the efficacy of our strategies for adaptation and mitigation plans to deal with disaster management. Honorable House Chair, I table before this House the budget vote report for vote number 29 of the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development for consideration and for adoption by this House. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Steyn.
House Chairperson, we all know how the apartheid state's policy of separate development gave effect to legislation that set aside 13% of the country's land for the use and occupation of the African majority. But for a few negligible exceptions, Africans were not permitted to occupy or own land outside of the 13% land area reserved for them. The Native Trust and Land Act empowered the apartheid government to place in trust the land reserved for use by Africans. The apartheid state passed the Bantu Homeland Citizenship Act, in terms of which every African was stripped of South African citizenship. In its place, they were assigned citizenship of a homeland of the ethnic group to which they belonged, irrespective of whether there were any links between them and such a homeland. In this way, many Africans became foreigners in the land of their birth. This is our history, and the reason why we worked hard to negotiate one of the best constitutions in the world. The founding provision of our constitution states, and I quote, "The Republic of South Africa is one sovereign democratic state, founded on the values of human dignity, the achievement of equality, and the enhancement of human rights and freedoms," unquote. Nice words, and a great ideal to have. But unfortunately, this is not the current reality of millions of Black South Africans still living as second-class citizens, fighting to have tenure security and their dignity restored. The apartheid's period skewed ownership patterns is still in effect today. We only have to look at recent court judgments to see and understand how little things have changed under our new democratically elected government. How the ANC government treats the aspiration of Black South Africans that want to become full owners of their land. On 11 June 2021, the court found that the Ingonyama Trust acted unlawfully in issuing leases to people who are already the true and beneficial owners of the land in terms of Zulu customary law. The judgment authored by Deputy Judge President Isaac Madondo went beyond that to say that the way leases were issued abrogated citizens' constitutional rights to tenure security, such as the informal rights to land which are protected by the 1996 Interim Protection of Informal Land Rights Act, and the rights of people with old order permission to occupy certificates. The court also found that Minister Didiza did not protect the rights of residents living on ITB land and gave her 3 months to rectify the situation. What have you done so far, Minister? This judgment is important as it has enormous ramifications for the tenure security of the 12 million South Africans living in all former homelands areas. Not only has no effort been made to change the 1996 Interim Protection Law into more permanent legislation, no real effort has been made to survey and register the 7.7 million hectares of land in order to make it easy to record rights once a system is found to record permanent rights. But it's not only people living on former homeland land that is affected by the unwillingness of the ANC to give permanent tenure security or title deeds to those that want to have that security. In its judgment in the case between Ragase and the Minister of Land Reform, the court stated that, I quote, "Despite the contents of various programs and strategies, the evidence in this case confirms the ineffectiveness of either these policies or their implementation, and that land reform, despite it being constitutional imperative, has been slow and frustratingly so," unquote. From the judgment, it is clear that ample opportunity exists to develop well-reasoned policy and legislation to give effect to land redistribution, land development, and the eradication of spatial inequality. It is clear, not only from these judgments, but also during interactions with farmers and community members on the ground, that the slow pace of land reform is due to numerous government failures, a lack of capacity in government departments, effective monitoring and evaluation, and political will and leadership. According to a written answer by Minister Didiza, the department is the custodian of 10.4 million hectares of land, of which only 112,000 hectares were transferred, and 1.29 million was made available for leases in the past 5 years. This department spends 20.6% of its budget on administration, which is the second largest allocation of its total appropriation for 22-23. The ongoing chaotic management of land administration and constant underachievement of targets is a direct reflection on the poor strategic leadership of this department. The Democratic Alliance is clear in its position that the failure of land reform is not the consequence of any constitutional deficiency, nor is it due to the government's lack of funds to compensate owners for land purchased. We need political will to bring about clear land transformation. We need to provide certainty that property rights will be protected and that expropriated land will be compensated for and due process followed. We need to acknowledge that the transfer of land alone will not secure the economic success of an agricultural enterprise. Knowledge, skills, infrastructure, markets, equipment, and access to water for irrigation is required to successfully farm on commercial scale, all of which forms part of post-settlement support. That is not currently happening. South Africa belongs to all who live in it, and we will continue to fight for the protection and expansion of individual property rights for all, for reasons of justice, fairness, and for the future prosperity of South Africa. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Matiase.
Thank you so much, Honourable Chair. Chairperson, the EFF rejects budget vote 29 on agriculture, land reform and rural development. It is an uninspired budget, fundamentally out of touch with the reality of the land and agricultural challenges the country faces. At the core of these challenges is lack of political will by this department to take tough decisions to salvage the little that is left of South African agriculture and to fundamentally restructure the entire structure of the agrarian economy to ensure that land reform is widely redistributive and that agriculture is largely responsible for sparking growth in the countryside. To put matters to context, South Africa has seen a dramatic decline in the number of agricultural producers over the past decade. The dairy sector is one of the most seriously affected, with about 73% decline in the number of dairy farmers in the country. These numbers are declining because most of these farms are bought by bigger enterprises who want to consolidate and monopolize agricultural production, but in real terms lead to a dramatic reduction in the country's ability to produce what it needs. The result is that we now import basic products that we used to export as a country. This could be corrected if the country were to revisit its decision to deregulate the agricultural sector and provide subsidies to agricultural producers. There is no agricultural economy anywhere in the world that has developed without massive state regulation and investment. It is foolish to think that ours would grow and meet the demands of this generation without massive state support. The state support needed for a restructured agriculture must, however, follow a massive and independent program of land redistribution in this country. It is inexcusable and treasonous that today, 28 years since 1994, white people still own over 70% of agricultural land in this country, while African people, the primary subjects of land dispossession, own a little more than 4% of the land. There is no determined effort in this budget and in previous budgets to drastically scale up land redistribution. There is no policy or programmatic departure from the redundancy of the past 2 decades And at this pace, it would take over 100 years just to redistribute a mere 30% of land back to the African people. We need a radical policy shift, and that, Minister, cannot be premised on your childish view sponsored by Johan Kirsten from Stellenbosch, that land reform can be successful if premised on a policy encouraged white farmers to donate land to land reform purposes. White farmers are beneficiaries of of colonial land dispossession and apartheid forced removals. They knowingly—
Honorable Matiase, can I just take this? Just allow me to take this point of order, please.
Naive to think that today—
Honorable Matiase, Honorable Matiase,
to give away this stolen
Honorable
land.
Matiase, I want to take a point of order. Can you just
Honorable
hold
Chair.
there so that I take a point of
Chair.
order? Yes,
Yes,
Honorable Member.
Honorable Matthias has just called Minister childish. I think it's unparliamentary and he must withdraw.
Honorable Member, I will come back to that point of order. Please proceed, Honorable Member.
It is naive to think that today white people have some humanity and sense of guilt to give away this stolen land back to African people. It will simply never happen. We need to expropriate land without compensation to resolve the centuries-old land question in this country. That is the only viable principle upon which a thoroughgoing program of land redistribution and rural development can happen. We offered you, when I say you, I mean the ANC, this opportunity to change for good the nature of land redistribution in this country, and you decline it in favor of your white financiers. But what is more despicable is that you are refusing to do the bare minimum, even within the limits of the sell-out constitutional order, in as far as land is concerned. You have up to this day refused to develop an all-encompassing legislative framework to secure tenure rights of people living under strenuous tenure conditions on farms and informal homelands. You have dragged your feet in developing an overarching land redistribution legislation to guide the government's land reform program. You have allowed people such as Jerome Ngwenya, the erstwhile chairperson of the Ngwenya Matras Board, to continue mismanaging the affairs of the board, thereby bringing into disrepute the honorable name of the Zulu royal family. You have refused to develop a comprehensive program of pre- and post-settlement support to the few beneficiaries of land. You have put into abeyance indefinitely the settlement of the land claims you opportunistically reopened in 2014, raising expectations of people for things you knew very well you had no intention of delivering. You have failed in every imaginable aspect of land reform, and the electorate must finally see you for who you are and what you represent. We reject this budget vote and reject the ANC and its falsehood. Thanks, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Kebekulu.
Chairperson, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, nomphakathi oyingxenye yesigcawu ukulalela inkulumo yanamhlanje. Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development has, for a number of years, let the people of our country down. Whilst we welcome and note the year-on-year positive developments within the agricultural sector in growing and contributing to the GDP, the line function departments and entities that now make up this department are suffering. The land reform and the restitution of land to the people of our country has taken far too long to effect change in the lives of millions who were left destitute and disenfranchised. Mhlonishwa Sihlalo, siyadinga ukuba udaba lwamaplazi ayegazethiwe akasuqashiswa ngoba lokho akwehli kahle emphakathini owafake izicelo. Okufanelekile ukuthi lamaplazi kumele adluliselwe kulabo abantu befake izicelo ngawo. Uma kuliqiniso ukuthi umthetho awuvumi ukuba abe esathintwa impela akube njalo. Chairperson. Honourable Chairperson, the matters arising from the committee report on this budget are all noted and must be duly implemented in order to ensure that the process of land reform takes place as intended and that the development of rural towns, villages, and communities takes center stage. In relation to Section 25 of the Constitution, I would like to remind this House that land reform must take place as was intended many years ago with reasonable compensation. In terms of agriculture, we should be mindful of the devastating effects climate change will have on this sector and its ability to feed South Africa. We must ensure that enough funds are available for climate proofing our farmers and for protecting the export market of our agricultural goods. Honourable Chairperson, I'm sorry. Let me not beat around the bush when it comes to the biggest challenge faced by the current administration of our country, and that is the cancer of corruption within the system. It must be stressed that we will not move forward if this cancer is not treated and completely eradicated. Ngibuyele sihlalo odabeni oluthinta umhlaba ongaphansi kwengonyama trust. Liqinisele ngephikwe ukuthi yigcunswana nje kuphela labantu abakhwele emagqumeni bememeze ukuthi abana amalungelo omhlabathi abantu abahleli ngaphansi komhlabathi wengonyama trust. Akulona iqiniso lokho. Abantu abahleli lapha bathakasile abanangxaki ngokuhlala kwabo kulo mhlabathi ngaphansi kwengonyama trust. Labo abakhokhiswa ngokuhlala lapho yilabo abahwebayo kuphela ukuze ngoba basebhizinisini kube khona izinto abayifakayo esikhwameni sengonyama trust ze ikwazi ukuqhubeka nokuletha izinto ezizidingo emphakathini owakhelwe ingonyama trust. Ngakho-ke kufanele sikuqonde futhi ukuthi akufanele abantu bakhulume ngazathi bathathisa ezimvweni zabantu abathile. Kuphela ilelo qoqwana elinamathuba okuxhaswa ukuthi alihambe lifafaza umoya ongaphelele wokuthi abantu abahleli endaweni zamakhosi ngaphansi kwengonyama trust labo bantu abakhululekile abakwazi ukwenza nokuphatha nokusebenzisa umhlabathi ngendlela yabo. Wonke umuntu ohleli umhlabathi uhlala ekhululekile. Asikugwemeke lokho ukuthi kube yasenjalo abantu bacakafula isakhiwo ngathi amaphutha sinamaphutha esinawo. Alikho iphutha kuphathweni komhlabathi ongaphansi kwengonyama trust. Kuliqiniso-ke esihlalo wami ukuthi abantu abahleli lo mhlabathi ongaphansi kwengonyama trust abalalele uma banikezwa ithuba lokukhuluma ukuze bekwazi ukuthi izimvo zabo zaziwe noma ubani. Ngale kwalokho sihlalo iqembu lenkatha lizwakalisa ukwesekela nokuncoma isabelo mali salomnyango esikhishwe salonyaka. Ngiyathokoza kakhulu.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
What's that now?
Delivering his speech to the House, a point of order was raised, and I've subsequently checked with the NA table staff. The member referred to the minister's childish. The point of order is thus not sustained. I now call upon the next speaker, and that is the Honourable T. Breed. The Honourable Breed.
Thank you, Chairperson. I believe I found a quote I can agree with from a person my colleagues from the ruling party benches might even listen to. He was an Irish politician, but a socialist and a trade unionist at that. And at the turn of the previous century, he said, "Agriculture was the first occupation of man, and as it embraces the whole earth, it is the foundation of all other industries." This also underscores what Bernard Baruch, famous for being an American financier and foreign policy advisor to Presidents Wilson, Roosevelt, and Truman, said. Agriculture is the greatest and fundamentally the most important of our industries. The cities are but the branches of the trees of the national life, the roots of which go deeply into the land. We all flourish or decline with the farmer. The Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development has a back-to-front approach when it comes to addressing problems and starting projects. Land reform projects, the Agricultural and Agri-Processing Master Plan, the Cannabis Master Plan and all its facets, Agri-BEE Fund, NARISEC, to name but a few, are all examples hereof. Die departement gaan beslis konkurrente funksies in die provinsies, sowel as hul begroting seker blameer vir hul tekortkominge. Maar die punt bly steeds. Die departement faal sy landbouers en gevolglik die land en sy ekonomie. Michelle Granger of the North Carolina Sweet Potato Commission said farmers not only produce the food and fiber we need, but they also ensure our national security and economic stability. It would do this department good to remember it. But to briefly highlight the programs and the allocated appropriations, the purpose of Program 2 is to oversee livestock production, game farming, animal and plant health, natural resources, and disaster management. Program 2 received approximately 14% of the total vote appropriation. Despite its important role in promoting agricultural production, managing biosecurity and sector-related risks, plant and animal diseases, and pests, including disasters, Program 2's budget allocation has been stagnant and will further decline by an average of 1% over the MTEF period. Taking into account the FMD outbreak, to name but one of the recent disease outbreaks, the ongoing locust problem, the issues experienced daily by vets regarding vaccines, our revoked OIE certificate concerning FMD, and the most recent banning of our exports, specifically noting the banning of our wool to China, our greatest exporter of wool, also being reminded that our wool industry is an almost 5 billion rand industry. This allocation, as well as the findings in terms of monitoring and evaluation, is a matter of grave concern. There is also a misalignment between financial resource allocation and performance targets among and within departmental programs. For example, the administration program receives a larger budget than Program 2. That is a program central to agriculture. 57% of administration's budget goes to compensation of employees, yet monitoring and evaluation within the department is weak. It remains a challenge and will continue to affect accountability and service delivery. Accountability that needs to assess and oversee the 53% of the total budget that goes to transfers and subsidies that includes the interventions implemented by provinces. We cannot afford to have transferred funds not being optimally used. Program 3, that speaks to food security, has also a waning budget that is continually being ill-spent. We will never achieve true food security, not in a greater or household sense, if this remains the case. Voorsitter, ons kan verder vir dae aangaan oor die entiteite, befondsing daarvan, hul magte en bevoegdhede of werklik mandate en wat hulle eintlik met hulle dae maak. Entiteite soos die LNR word onderbefonds en onderbinde deur die departement wat eerder van buitediensverskaffers gebruik maak. Die navorsing wat die LNR gedoen het rondom klimaatsverandering, weerspatrone aan ons kuslyn en verskeie ander faktore kon gehelp het om die KZN ramp af te weer, as die departement maar net na sy eie entiteite geluister het. Voorsitter, dan het ons nog nie eens begin vra rondom die eerste klas inentingsfabriek wat sedert 2015 in wording is, steeds begroot word en nog nie 'n stap verder gevorder het nie. Of die back and closure fasiliteit wat ook al jare in wording is en al miljoene rand gekos het. Of die landboumeesterplan wat op nommer 99 verander is omdat sekere landbouorganisasies nie daarmee saamgestem het nie en basta met die res van hulle. Voorsitter, die probleem is die ANC, want die ANC pak alles ideologies in plaas van ekonomies aan en tot en met die minister en haar departement nie hierdie kop skuif gaan maak nie, gaan alle landbouers vir altyd gefaal word. Maar ek sluit af. 'n Volk wat vir sy landbou sorg vir sy toekoms. Ek dank u.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Deputy Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, the Honourable Squatcha. Honourable Deputy Minister, please proceed.
House Chairperson, Honourable Minister Titiza, Deputy Minister Kapa, Ministers and Deputy Ministers on the platform, Honourable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, board members of our state-owned entities, senior officials of the department, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Very interesting fundamental day that we have today, discussing the department and more especially my emphasis on the question of the land I so often feel that South Africa is blessed with having a measured, matured government like the democratically elected government, which is able to sanitize things that come from the far right and issues that come from the far left. We are the mainstream, providing proper solutions to this country. Honorable House Chair, allow me, since others have also, to quote something important about the land.
Honorable Deputy Minister, may I request whoever is controlling the visuals coming from where you're speaking to correct it. And until then, they must rather switch off your camera, please. You don't come across visually very well on the platform at the moment. Can they please sort it out? And in the meantime, switch off the video so that we can continue with the debate. Honorable Papo, you have your hand up. Honorable Papo?
No, I never raised it.
Your hand is up, Honorable Papo. Honorable members, will you lower your hands, please? Because it seems to me you don't know why you're raising your hand.
I wanted to raise the same issue raised to the Deputy Minister.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Honorable Papo. Honorable Deputy Minister, please continue with your video screen off until the time that it is properly fixed. Please continue, Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. I was about to go into the code that I had isolated. The code goes as follows. Without freedom, we want no life. Without dignity, we want no life. Without justice, we want no life. Without bread for our children, we want no life. Without a future, we want no life. That is why we say fatherland or death, quote unquote. Fidel Castro addressing the 4th anniversary of the Cuban Revolution. Honorable members, with this quote, I just want to illustrate to anyone who still doubts the fundamental importance of the land. In the length and breadth of our country, when the issue of the land was discussed, we could see multitudes of our people attending and with one voice. We want our land. Land is key for human settlements. Land is key for agricultural production. Land is key for economic growth. Land is key for cultural purposes. Land is key for environmental purposes. To indicate the seriousness with which the president regards the issue of land, he went to establish an interministerial committee on land chaired by none other than the deputy president to work in an integrated manner and to fast-track the release of the land. Although we are heartened with not having been able to succeed in the vote on Section 25, we still believe that the resolution of the problems of our country is making sure that land is shared on an equitable basis. The point that one is trying to make is made by the president. The persisting inequalities in the manner in which land is owned, managed, and transacted remains one of the most contentious issues to be resolved. I now wish to draw your attention to some of our key programs. On land redistribution, land acquisition to achieve the goal of equitable access to the land as enshrined in the Constitution. Our department acquires and allocates land under the land redistribution program. In the 2020-21 financial year, we have reported that we acquired 22,000 hectares of land. We've improved on our acquisition by over 100% from our previous financial year by acquiring 57,000 hectares of land through PLUS in the 2021-22 financial year. This achievement is just a drop in the ocean, and we're not complacent about it, as we know that inequitable access to land remains the main challenge in this country. On land allocation, in line with our national policy for beneficiary selection, we continue to ensure land allocation targets the vulnerable members of society. And to that extent, 39,000 hectares of PLUS land allocated. Over 50% of this land was allocated to targeted vulnerable groups. It is our desired goal to improve on this as we implement the policy. We will continue to target areas where there are huge land disparities, especially in the communal, peri-urban, and rural areas. Our department had to make additional funding to this program through budget reprioritization to ensure that more land is required. In the current financial year, a budget of 366 million has been set aside for land redistribution. In support of the rapid release of state land to enhance land reform, in support of the initiative to release underutilized and vacant state land, the department has allocated 679,943 hectares of 700,000 hectares of agricultural land to various farmers, cooperatives, entities, communities, including vulnerable groups like farm dwellers and labor tenants. On tenure reform, we have set aside a budget of 217 million for the acquisition of land to address security of tenure. In this regard, the department intends to acquire 5,000 hectares of land in the current financial year. The land acquired for security of tenure addresses different land tenure needs, including settlement of the labor tenants application and ESTA occupiers. The subject of CPAs, the department recognizes the challenges facing communal property associations within the limited budget. We continue to ensure that CPAs are capacitated and supported to be compliant with the Act. Led by our minister, we have got into a program of visiting all CPAs throughout the country. We have so far visited 3 provinces, and that work continues. Last year, we said that we will audit CPAs over a 2-year period. This current financial year is year 2 of that work. Currently, more than 1,500 CPAs have been established and registered nationally. In the past financial year, we supported 581 CPAs against our target of 577. And we will further train 585 members on governance of these CPAs in the current financial year. As government, we are concerned about governance issues within CPAs. And we are at one with the portfolio committee and select committee when they raise such serious concerns. We will continue to grapple with governance issues and mediation of disputes. For us, we consider that as dealing with the symptom and not the actual cause of the problem. The fundamental question that we might need to face perhaps is at this time to consider whether CPAs are the best land holding model. Is it not time to consider subdivisions in certain instances? For example, where family members have been brought into a legal entity and they experience continuous disagreements to the detriment of the business enterprise. Another major worry is that when beneficiaries have acquired land through the various land reform programs, they turn around to defeat the very same objectives of land reform, including not utilizing the land or leasing it out for mere car rental income. In saying so, I must hasten to add that a lot of support needs to be provided to CPAs. More thinking needs to go into how we make them functional, or whether they are the best land holding model given governance challenges. Despite these difficulties, there are positive areas. There are success stories. For example, through our support, the Gatle CPA in the Greater Tzaneen and Chivula CPA in Musina were able to resolve their governance issues and compliance challenges. And as a result, they were able to attract investors and thus created jobs for beneficiaries. Farm dwellers, the department will prioritize ESTA awareness campaigns to create awareness and cap illegal farm evictions. We'll also provide legal representation to farm dwellers through Legal Aid South Africa and mediation services. On the 26th of March, 2022, I was in Belfast in Mpumalanga at Park de Plaats and Rietfontein farms, where we handed over 35 housing units to farm dwellers and labor tenants. These beneficiaries had been living in mud houses all along and are now staying in proper brick houses. The department will expedite land acquisition for farm dwellers to provide long-term security of tenure. The department will also expedite the piloting of agri-villages in eviction hotspots of KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape, and Mpumalanga provinces. On communal land tenure, government's position paper on land administration and communal tenure was approved by Cabinet for further consultation with traditional leadership, traditional communities, civil society organizations, and other interest groups. And the consultation process has been completed, which will lead into the much anticipated national summit, which is going to take place very, very soon at the end of this month. The development of the communal land tenure policy and the communal land tenure bill has commenced and awaiting the national summit consultations before moving on with the approval processes. On restitution, the Commission on Restitution of Land Rights is established by Section 4 of the Restitution of Land Rights Act of 1994. And I quote that section: a person or community dispossessed of property after 19th June 1913 as a result of past racially discriminatory laws or practices is entitled to the extent provided by an act of parliament, either to restitution of that property or to equitable redress. Notwithstanding the challenges presented by COVID-19 virus and the attendant state of disaster regulations, the Commission was able to achieve and exceed its 2021-22 annual performance targets, achieving 103% on the settlement of land claims and 106% on the target of finalizing land claims. Let me go to the issue of the Commission and the progress towards autonomy. To deal with organizational structure that does not align with Section 4 and 21 of the founding legislation that envisions an autonomous entity, Project Kuyasa instituted an organizational form sub-project whose outcome seeks to transform the Commission into an autonomous public entity. A business case which details the proposed design and cost implications of setting up the Commission as an autonomous entity has been developed and submitted to both DPSA and the National Treasury for further processing. The Office of the Valuer General, in the recent past, the ministers admitted the challenges impacting negatively on service delivery at the Office of the Valuer General. In the past year, we began to implement a turnaround strategy, and we are now reaping the fruits. The 2021 allocation has assisted the OVG to improve its performance with regards to personnel and systems. The OVG was able to eliminate the valuations backlog inherited since inception, improve its audit outcomes, improve its management and internal processes, implemented a valuations tracking system. Currently, we have 21 was in the employment of the OVG. However, we still do have vacancies. This helps us to mitigate the risk we're exposed to in the past. The 107 million allocation in 2022-23 will be used for further strengthening the organization. When all is said and done, our stakeholders want to see an improved turnaround time.
On a point of
Honorable
order,
Chairperson,
on a point of
Honorable
order,
Chairperson, I am excited to hear Honorable Stein.
Chairperson, on a point of order.
Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, there is a member that has raised a hand, the Honorable Stein. Honorable member, why are you raising your hand?
Honorable Chairperson, you did mention at the start of this debate that we are in the House and that when we are in the House, people on the gallery cannot participate. So I see the Deputy Minister brought himself a whole house full of people clapping. Can we ask that that be stopped, please?
Yes, no, thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Members, we allow that there is members on the platform who participate, but we do not allow guests, whether they are on the virtual platform, in the ministry or elsewhere, to be part of the proceedings. So let's just stick to the rules as all of us know it. You may proceed, Honorable Deputy Minister, and you have just less than a minute left. Please proceed.
No, thank you, Honorable Chair. I just want to indicate that, in fact, I actually thought, when I had people clapping, I thought it was Honorable Stein and others, because I did not bring anyone here. You know? Honorable Chair, I just want to say that I hear some members, the FF Plus member, Honorable Priet, saying that this is a problem of the ANC. Closer look and study of our own history will indicate that these are ancestors of some people that might have closer proximity to Honorable Priet. The ANC is cleaning up a mess created by apartheid colonialism.
Honorable Deputy Minister, your time is now expired. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Swart.
Thank you, House Chair. With your permission, I will leave the camera off due to connection issues. Chair, the ACDP would like to pay tribute to all the farmers, commercial and emerging, along the whole agricultural sector and those all along the value chain who continue to provide food to South Africans. South Africa has the highest level of food security in sub-Saharan Africa and is a net exporter of food. And for this, we can be very grateful. En ons sê aan ons boere, ons is baie dankbaar. However, the Russia-Ukraine war has raised concerns about escalating global food insecurity, as these countries are major exporters of grains, oilseeds, fertilizers, and crude oil. Since the war started, the prices of these commodities have risen significantly, and South Africa, interlinked in the global commodities market, is exposed to these price increases. The grain and oilseed plantings in KwaZulu-Natal has also suffered due to the heavy recent rains, leading to delays in harvesting. There are also pre-existing constraints to agricultural growth, which include inefficiencies in administration, infrastructure issues, security, and geopolitics. Now, despite the fact that South Africa is a net exporter of food, there are roughly 6 million people in the country who do not have enough food to eat. What is even more alarming is that according to the latest data available to the National Department of Health, 199 children died from malnutrition in the first 2 months of this year, with the KwaZulu-Natal the hardest hit. This is probably the tip of the iceberg, with the Department of Health saying it was concerned that many more child deaths might occur away from its facilities, especially in rural districts. Now, it is a shame that government donates millions of rands to foreign countries when some 6 million people in our own country do not have enough food to eat, and children are dying increasingly of malnutrition in the country. Surely, Honourable Minister, charity must begin at home, and more resources should be directed to ensure our population is not starving. People go hungry. People go hungry not because food is expensive or scarce, but because, as agricultural economist Wandile Sishlobo states, quote, households simply do not have the income. Even if something costs R2 to a man without R2, that is unaffordable. The ACDP agrees. But whose responsibility is it primarily to feed the hungry? Whilst government bears the lion's share of responsibility, it cannot do it alone. The private sector, civil society, and ordinary people need to assist at this critical time in our nation. Food donations to organizations that feed the hungry should be encouraged, and the ACDP is playing its role in this regard. Lastly, the ACDP wishes, in addition to thanking all the farmers for providing food security, to thank all those that are donating food, particularly following the devastating floods in KZN. You are the true heroes. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Swart. The next speaker is the Honorable Chweke.
Sihlalo wendlu wisomthetho, Minister and Deputy Ministers, members of the House. Honorable Chair, the 1955 Freedom Charter says that the land must be shared amongst those who work it. And further ithi, abalimi mabancediswe ngembewu nezixhobo zokulima. The 1992 ANC Ready to Government Policy Guidelines says that the ANC government will pursue increased agricultural productivity, ensured food security, and further pursue a policy of land redistribution to ensure that all South Africans have an equitable access to land. South Africa's progressive land reform policy has 3 pillars, which are land restitution, land redistribution, and security of land tenure rights. Sikhumbuzane ke sihlalo ukuthi this parliament has passed the enabling legislation on land restitution in terms of provisions of Section 25, subsection 7 of the Constitution of the Republic of the country. And the piece of legislation is known as the Restitution of Land Rights Act number 22 of 1994. Incedisa ke sihlalo elalungu belisithi akukho ne-legislation ethetha ngale nto. The purpose of the country's land distribution program, as stated in the white paper on South African land policy of 1997, is to provide the poor with the land for residential and productive purposes in order to improve their livelihood. Mohluko ke phakathi kwethu African National Congress ne-opposition kule parliament is in our outlook. Thina sibona imicelamngeni, bona babona ukohluleka. With every challenge, there's an opportunity to create a better South Africa for all, where everyone gets an opportunity to share in the economic benefits of the country. Land restitution program is about ensuring the equitable redress for the historical injustice of land dispossession. Asizuyiwawisha singazohlafuna amanzi xa sithetha ngomba womhlaba. Wona umhlaba mawubuyele ebantwini. Our immediate concern has always been around the productivity of the land reform project. It is only through productive use of the land that our people's lives can be improved and to further guarantee our nation's food security. It is on this account that the ANC will keep on emphasizing the importance of working the land. And this is consistent with the Freedom Charter and the 1992 policy guidelines. One of the communities working the land is the Bela Bela Community Property Association. That is creating job opportunities. The CPA supplies its produced eggs to big retailers in the country. Some of the challenges faced by some CPAs are thus affecting productivity, vary from non-compliance with the objectives of the CPAs Act, ukuthakuthano phakathi kwe-beneficiaries, ukungavani kwabo ngokuthi umhlaba bawuphuhlisa njani na, and land administration. and the support given to CPAs will ensure that many more CPAs become profitable, like the Bela Bela CPA. The ANC in its 54th National Conference has reiterated the importance of democratizing the control of areas under communal land tenure, as well as the evaluation and appraisal of the CPA, with an intention to help reconcile the right of rural communities to own land and to foster better relations between traditional leaders and their respective communities. The sub-program on food security and agrarian reform will get an allocation of 6.3 billion rand. This is the second biggest allocation after restitution sub-program. There is a need for a variable development of agricultural sector through the creation and support of smallholders farmers. In 2018, President Cyril Ramaphosa said that the agricultural revolution should be embedded in land reform, and that redistributed farms should be active in production. In order to realize the productivity of land reform, about 27.6 billion has been allocated towards food security, land reform, and restitution. The other allocation to take note of in this budget is the 3.7 billion rand toward household expenditure through grant funding for land acquisition and farmer development support. And 400 million will be transferred to the land bank, while 2.4 billion rand will be in a form of transfers to the municipal and provincial governments. In conclusion, as the ANC, we have long noted the lack of access to land is one of the causes of poverty, both in urban and rural settings. In order to realize effective agrarian reform, issues of lack of access to adequate supply of water needs serious attention, as this has a direct impact on our food security. The employment of new technologies can help improve our water usage, as research shows that vertical farming can use about 95% less water than conventional farms and yields 75 times more crops per square meter. As the ANC, we stand in support of budget vote number 29 for the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. Diabonga Sihlan.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Deputy Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, the Honourable Kapa.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, honourable members, Minister Didiza, Deputy Minister Squasha, ministers and deputy ministers on the platform, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee and members of the Portfolio Committee. Ikumgani kuzwelonke, inkosi zemveli, amakhosi namakhosazana, izizwe zomhlaba, ndiyanibulisa. Members of our statutory boards and councils, farmer organizations and CEOs of commodity organizations, farmers and farm workers, those men and women who work and enjoy all types of weather, senior officials of the department. Chairperson, it gives me great pleasure to address this House today on the occasion of Budget Vote 29 of the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. The state of our rural communities is a stark reminder of the oppression that once visited those people by the apartheid era, which is characterized by now, today, high levels of poverty, underdevelopment, and unemployment. Rural areas continue to bear such scars of a brutal system which sought to strip Black people of their dignity through, among others, the theft of their land, livestock, and to condemn them to be a constant supply of labor for the formal economy. Approximately 33.7% of South African population live in these dusty rural areas. These communities are among the poorest in our country. In fact, it does happen in many countries of the world. But due to their limited access to social services, including education and healthcare, they remain poorer than their counterparts in cities. The legacy of the past system of oppression subjected our people, particularly in rural areas, to underdevelopment, unemployment, and intergenerational poverty. Our government has been working hard to address the historical challenges facing South Africans in those rural areas by engaging in socio-economic processes to uplift these communities through rural development initiatives. We will continue to bring transformation to rural areas through agrarian reform policies, which aim to ensure that such communities begin to truly enjoy their liberation as well. As a result, the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development is leading this charge of bringing much needed development and support to rural communities that will then achieve sustainable economic growth in those spaces. Chairperson, the COVID-19 pandemic had a profound negative impact on these poor and marginalized communities. The pandemic, which remains a factor in the lives of our people even today, disrupted their economy, impacted their ability to many citizens to earn a living, and caused deepened poverty in such areas. As part of government support initiatives to mitigate against effects of pandemic, the presidential economic stimulus with an agricultural support administered by our department brought much needed relief to struggling smallholders and subsistence farmers. Through this support initiative, subsistence farmers were able to obtain production inputs through a voucher system, which allowed them to continue to grow their crops, feed their animals, and in turn sustain their livelihood. I also need to say sorry, because there were some glitches. And those who still have expired vouchers, that matter is being attended to, and we are actually sure that in the next time we'll do it best. Please bear with us. More than 50,000 subsistence farmers applied for the second phase of this PES, which will bring further relief and ensure that jobs are created and sustained. Global warming and climate change are realities that we have to address as a collective. This means the government, traditional authorities, civil society, citizens and residents of this country need to come together. We must change our living patterns and do all we can to reduce emissions and improve human settlement planning to avoid future catastrophic natural disasters. I do know that the National Environmental Management Act, NEMA, will also be a helpful and enabling policy that will make us to work together, irrespective of our spheres of government or being NGOs or traditional authorities. But as if the outbreak of the pandemic was not enough, another disaster occurred, which affected largely KwaZulu-Natal as well as Eastern Cape and Northwest. Our hearts and prayers go out to all families who lost their loved ones during the floods in KwaZulu-Natal and Eastern Cape in April 2022. This disaster has costed lives, property, infrastructure, and brought pain and sadness to families, communities, and our nation. We extend our appreciation to every person and organizations who extended a helping hand to those affected by the floods. We know that subsistence agriculture plays an important role in meeting the needs of the residents in rural areas. The department plans to implement a number of projects that are aimed at increasing jobs, developing skills, and the provision of infrastructure development to support rural economic transformation. The creation of jobs is critical in alleviating poverty and improving the lives of rural communities. The department plays a critical role in contributing to the creation of environment conducive for growth of rural economy.
Honorable
In
Deputy
the
Minister,
2021,
Honorable Deputy Minister, will you just pause there, please? I see the hand of the Honorable Sheikh Imam is up. Honorable Member, why are you raising your hand?
Sorry, Chairperson, just to tell you that I was in another debate, but I can be available if you make the necessary. I couldn't send a chat, but sorry for that.
No, Honorable Member, it's the second time today that this is happening. I will request the table staff to interact with the smaller parties so that we don't have these disruptions during the debate. So that if they are busy in another debate, we know beforehand and we can slot them in later. But we cannot continue like this. It needs to be managed by the table staff. Thank you, Honorable Member. Please proceed, Honorable Deputy Minister, and my apologies for this break.
Sorry to the smaller parties, Chair. The creation of jobs is critical to alleviating poverty and improving the lives of the rural communities. The department plays a critical role in contributing to the creation of environment conducive for the growth of the rural economy. In the 2021-22 financial year, the department completed a total of 30 infrastructure projects that support the farmer production support units. 64 infrastructure projects were completed to support the animal health management programs. This number indeed will increase in 2022-2023 financial year as we roll out projects to further support growth and development in rural areas that I spoke about. The Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development supports the proposed Eastern Seaboard Development. That is a multi-nodal smart city development initiative launched in November 2021 by the President of the Republic of South Africa. This important development covers the jurisdiction of 4 districts in municipalities, which are the poorest indeed and rural. That is OR Tambo, Ugu, Harigwala, and Alfred Nzo in the Eastern Cape. But Minister, I wish I would add Sarah Batman, because that is one belt, coastal belt, that has got similar climate conditions and might be able to be clustered together in order to serve those people. Successful consultation engagements were held during May 2022 between traditional leadership, Department of Agriculture and Land Reform, Department of Cooperative Governments and Traditional Affairs, Municipal Infrastructure Support Agency, MISA, and the affected district that I've mentioned, and their traditional leaders. Indeed, this was very successful, and indeed, we have looked into their IDPs and tried to ensure that they are ready for the project. Chairperson, in the current financial year, more than 600 million has been allocated to rural infrastructure development. This allocation will be directed to infrastructure projects, including those related to animal health management, River Valley Catalytic Program, Farmer Producer Support Center, and the revitalization of rural towns. In fact, these and whenever towns, apartheid government was never interested in that. These were village management boards that were settled along the main roads. They had no land because there was no plan to actually expand them. And we will be attending to that. The ANC is here. As our country battles the scourge of gender-based violence, women and girls in rural areas have not been spared from this despicable social ill. One could even argue that they are even more vulnerable than their counterparts who live in urban areas. This is due to the underdevelopment in their communities, which often means no access to services such as law enforcement and medical facilities. This one is more challenging. Gender-based violence is a blight on the freedom which so many of our comrades paid their ultimate price. Women and girls are not safe in their homes. They are not safe in their own communities, even if they're among their own fathers. This situation has to be changed, and it must change. The Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, as a member of the National Rural Safety Forum, have contributed to the development of the Rural Safety Strategy, which aligns to the National Development Plan, Vision 2030, is called to build safer communities, with particular emphasis on the protection of vulnerable groups such as women, children, and people living with disabilities. The next 3 years, these, he said, include access to roads, Limpopo and Eastern Cape. The president has actually marshaled us to ensure that in these two, we actually attend to rural roads, surface upgrades to gravel roads in the Free State as well as Northwest. We welcome this initiative as it will go a long way towards improving the lives of our people by allowing cheaper and easier flow of goods and services, access to economic opportunities, and safer movement of our communities from one village to another. In addition to the department, we will work with farmer organizations, its counterparts in all spheres of government to implement a program of repairing and rehabilitation of rural and farm access roads to facilitate transport, logistics for the agricultural economy, including inputs. In fact, Chair, I would want to say this will be very much helpful to our people. Chairperson, our country is experiencing records of levels of unemployment, especially among the youth, women, and persons with disabilities. It is through the NARISEC program that we recruited youth in various TVET colleges across the country and created nearly 500 jobs for rural communities in 2021-22 financial year. In this group, the department included significant number of women and persons with disabilities. The department also employed NARISEC youth graduates and then assisted them assisted by placing them to those farmers who benefited from PES. And therefore, they were creating jobs for the young people. They were also supporting the old in order to be able to be productive. Through district development model, more than 600 youth were trained through Agricultural Research Council and have been supported with agricultural inputs. It is encouraging that 610 NARISEC participants who established enterprises in all our 9 provinces received support and afforded economic opportunities. In conclusion, Chair, we will continue to collaborate with social partners while we implemented targeted programs and projects which will bring development and create jobs and job opportunities for our rural communities. We will not rest until poverty is eradicated, frontiers of poverty are reversed, and there's prosperity and continued growth for all our people. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. The next speaker is the Honorable Sheikh Imam. The Honorable
Thank
Sheikh
you,
Imam.
House Chairperson, and allow me to apologize for participating in another meeting that took place at that time. Chairperson, the National Freedom Party will support the budget vote tabled here today. Allow me to commend the department for the work done on the introduction of an electronic system for small-scale farmers and others to be able to apply for phytosanitary certificates, which it would appear will go a long way in ensuring and enhance the export of goods, particularly agricultural goods for small-scale farmers. Now, I want to also say, Honorable Chairperson, that what we need to do is expedite or accelerate the process of land reform in the country, particularly, for the Khoi and San community, the people of District 6. And what is disappointing is the sale of land in the Leespik River, which is of significance to the Khoi and San community and which has been sold to the Two Rivers Development. Now, one of the matters of concern we have, Chairperson, in the agricultural sector is this, and we know as a result of the floods that took place in KwaZulu-Natal, one particular farmer, Benny Motli's family-owned sugarcane farm, suffered 20 million rand in crop and infrastructural damages. And this farm employs between 800 and 1,000 employees, and I'm given to understand the minister is intervening in this matter. However, the concern is that small-scale cane growers in South Africa have a distinct disadvantage as a result of the imports of sugar from Eswatini, which is duty-free. And what is more important to note, Chairperson, is that some of those who are directors or shareholders in these mills in Eswatini are big manufacturers that control the industry in South Africa, who have an edge over small businesses in South Africa, which is resulting in a jobs bloodbath. A good example is, as a result of the sugar being duty-free and or cheaper labor in Eswatini, even the product Chappie's bubblegum in South Africa is now produced in Eswatini. Now we're calling on the minister to intervene in this. We cannot have duty-free sugar coming in from Eswatini, but the industry, the cane growers are coming to a standstill in the country. Surely we need to put South Africa first. And then the other matter, of course, the concern is we have enough fertile soil, we have all the natural resources, we are importing wheat, we are now stuck as a result of the war that's taking place in Russia and Ukraine. And we believe that what should happen is that we should enhance our own agricultural sector, make sure there's more development in the rural areas so people don't have to migrate. I see my time is up. Thank you very much, Chairperson. The NFP supports them.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I now recognize the Honorable Kapa.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Chair, Honorable Prime Minister and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members, leaders of entities, officials and staff from the Department, Parliament and entities, guests and fellow South Africans. As I greet you in this month of the Unity of Africa and this month of victory over fascism, I would like first to remind this House and everyone that this concept of rural development was consciously adopted by this government to address the urban bias in South African situation, which, by the way, is known to be a conventional phenomenon. This tendency was further made crude in our country by the rule of apartheid and colonialism. And in this case, Honorable Chair, the word apartheid, translated properly into English, will mean separatism or apartheidism. It has nothing to do with development. Rural areas throughout South Africa were never developed. They were only reserves and source of cheap labor for mining and manufacturing industries. They were never developed except balkanization into Bantu states with fake independence. Given these circumstances, rural development is an integral part of socio-economic transformation. It is actually intended to develop the rural communities as well as the space they live in. As a result, it relates directly to the critical services, which include education, health, social services, public transport, and agricultural production and food security. Honorable Chair, the department has a number of programs that it implements on rural development. Infrastructure, kufunwa oba abantu basezilalini bangaphinde babe nemsebenzi hamba imigama emide okanye bakhwele izithuthi imigama emide behamba beyofuna ezinkonzo. Phinde futhi uqinisekise ukuba amasimi alinywayo namadlelo ayabiyelwa. Uqinisekise kananjalo uba amadamu akhona kumadlelo emfuyo. Uphinde uqinisekise ukuthi abantu abasezilalini basela basebenzise amanzi acocekileyo. When it comes to youth, through NADSEC, the department ensures that young people in rural areas get training and skills for social organization, upliftment, and economic development. Honorable Chair, it is a known fact that women in rural areas are the worst underdeveloped, and therefore the department wants to ensure that rural women have equal opportunities in all sectors of development. The infrastructure and conditions in the rural areas have been ignored. The department has understood the need to upgrade infrastructure and facilities that are conducive for the movement and activities of people living with disabilities. Rural development directly addresses unemployment, poverty, and inequality. This can only be understood and implemented by the ANC and its government. Or if you like, the ANC-led government, or if you like, the ANC government. This shows the department has planned and are implementing programs that are addressing rural poverty and underdevelopment. They are doing this under pressure from those who have always been beneficiaries of the poverty of our people. Uzoyifumana ke lento Honorable Minister kuba kaloku uxova intelezi nje impundulo ikujongile. Through intergovernmental relations, the department has demonstrated to appreciate all the concomitants of rural development, which include electrification, water and sanitation, and roads and bridges. Honorable Chair, as ANC, we urge all reasoning people to join us and support Vote 29 budget of the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. It seeks to address the needs of the poorest of the poor. It seeks to build the nation that was envisaged in the Freedom Charter and in the liberation struggle. Diabona ke umphathiswa ufuneka uyiqonde into yokuba kubonakala ngathi wena nabasekeli bakho niyayivala ntetho ixhaphakileyo lo myalezo uvela pha eMpuma Koloni othi ningahambi nidlala nithunyiwe. Izosinceda ke lento ukwenzela uba lo msebenzi niwuthunyiweyo uphumelele. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Masipa. Is the Honorable Masipa on the platform?
House Chair, annual performance planning is a once-off opportunity provided to the department by law to reflect and conduct a systematic review process of the past year's performance and provide plans and budget for the year ahead. The process also allows the department to apply corrective measures where it may have failed the people of South Africa. Once the department has completed the assessment, it is supposed to draw a list of key performance deliverables that contain specific measurable targets with timelines within which it must deliver using the allocated budget. Where there are fiscal constraints, the department can leverage the private sector for assistance. However, the department continues to use the same generic performance planning and budgeting approach, which has repeatedly failed it. This failed approach is affecting the department's ability to effectively implement programs such as blended finance. The table budget of 17.3 billion failed to factor in new and worrying institutional threats ranging from animal diseases, plant pests, operational deficiencies, and the knock-on effects of the ANC's Russian invasions of Ukraine. The department remains underfunded on biosecurity. The foot and mouth disease outbreak in 2011 cost the industry about 6 billion rands. This led the this led to the country losing its FMD-free status, which was only later regained in 2014. Tragically, South Africa was to lose its FMD-free status again in 2019, with an outbreak that cost an economy an estimated 10 billion rands. While the industry was fighting to regain the country's FMD-free status, 56 new outbreaks were recorded across the country. The question then is, why do we have annual plans that are not responsive to the real challenges in agricultural sector? The Eastern, Northern, and Western Cape provinces have experienced the worst locust outbreak in recent memory. The department demonstrated lack of planning capacity during operation after some key members of the locust control team were left unpaid with insufficient pesticide supplies, poor quality protective clothing, and substandard spraying equipment. Even worse, the OBP is failing our farmers. Farmers complain constantly about the lack of vaccines at OBP. From the 1st June, when the vaccination of horses starts, there's still no indication whether OBP will be able to supply the African horse sickness vaccines. The development of poor performance plans to produce poor service delivery outcomes is nothing new with the ANC government. Instead of building institutional capacity, ANC corruption has instead crippled state institutions and collapsed others. While Ramaphosa's administration claims to have prioritized infrastructure development to improve transport and food security, evidence on the ground shows that this is not the case. The poor maintenance of ports, rail, and road infrastructure is exacerbating food inflation and is threatening food security. Although transport does not fall under this department, the industry wants to see a collaborative response from the state organs aimed at addressing food security and skyrocketing inflation. But we all know that the ANC government care less about the vulnerable. While I still have the floor, Chair, let me address an important diplomatic effort that was covered in the media recently. The visit to Ukraine by the incoming President Honorable John Steenhuisen was very much in the best interest of South Africa. The Russian invasion in Ukraine is hitting South Africans hard in the pocket with rising fuel and food prices. The longer that this war carries on, buying petrol at 40 rand a litre isn't too far off the horizon. Honorable Steenhuisen has helped to focus the national conversation on economic dangers that we face should this war drag on. As if our food security isn't threatened already by this senseless Russian invasion of Ukraine. Recent survey by Dr. Candice Klute found that 1 in 5 farmers want to exit farming in the next decade. It is said indictment that this department doesn't see this as a looming national crisis. The DA government in the Western Cape has responded positively to these emerging challenges. The Provincial Department of Agriculture has recently entered into a MOU with Agriculture Commodity Group to fill the void of fiscal constraints, development of emerging farmers, and support of extension services. Through the department's innovation, it has introduced agro-processing on wheels to assist emerging farmers who want to process their products before selling them to the market. This is what a capable state must do to respond to challenges in the agricultural sector. In conclusion, the master plan that was signed off today was never presented to Parliament, except to the members of the ANC study group. While the DA support the state's collaboration with social partners and private sector leveraging to transform and grow the economy, we don't support the haphazard ceremonial plans that mean nothing to our farmers. A dangerous precedent is being set of reducing the portfolio committee members of this House to a rubber stamp role of the ANC cadre study group. Programs such as Agri-Park, Farmer Production Support Unit, Agri-BE, and Blended Finance failed to produce the desired results because the annual budget plan and policies were never aligned nor supported this plan. I thank you, Chair.
Honourable Member, your time is now expired. Thank you very much. The next speaker is the Honourable Klape.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. I request to switch off the video. I'm on load shedding here. Honorable
Please do so.
Chairperson, the Department of Agriculture, Rural Development and Land Reform oversees the operation of a number of public entities. It is therefore important to acknowledge the importance of this entity as part of the ecosystem that supports the industry. What is critical, Honorable Chair, is the strengthening and adequate resourcing of these entities in order to ensure that the work of the department is adequately supported. These entities are not on their own. They form an integral part of the agricultural sector ecosystem, and I will speak to some of them. Now, Honorable Chair, Honorable Steyn, let me indicate to you that irrespective of what you say, our people know their history. Have you ever pondered why land has to be transferred back to its rightful owners? Why is it where it is? Now, let me tell you what is political will. Political will is the 700,000 hectares of state land that President released for redistribution. Political will is the completion of phase 3 residential units of District 6 and the start of phase 4 and 5 to be completed in 2024-25 in order to restore the dignity of victims of apartheid's forced removals. Honorable Matthias, don't think South Africans has forgotten that you've refused with your party to support expropriation of land without compensation. And I wonder why. Probably so that you can come here and play big and pretend that you care. For your information, Honorable Member, expropriation of land without compensation is just but one of the mechanisms of land redistribution. We are not stuck as the African National Congress. We will continue with other programs to give our people land. Now, under the Commission on Restitution of Land Rights, by September 2021, a total of 82,295 claims were settled, benefiting 2.2 million beneficiaries, comprising 444,057 households. The extent of the land acquired and restored to land claimants was 3.8 million hectares. The total number of land claims outstanding at January 2022 was 6,907. We can boldly say that the Commission has settled 92% of claims lodged by 1998. For this financial year, by the way, as a committee, we are encouraging the Commission to push for completion of research of all older claims whilst continuing with the targets for settlement and finalization land claims. While there's a push to ensure that land claims are settled and finalized, the reality is that Commission does not have enough resources to do that. The current allocation of 3.7 billion, Honorable Minister, is inadequate to allow for settlement of all outstanding claims within the shortest time possible. Deputy Minister Skwatsha, we welcome the progress made by the Commission to ensure that it moves towards being an autonomous entity in line with PFMA, because we believe that will be to improve organizational efficiency and effectiveness. On the Office of the Evaluator General, its work was a new terrain, but considerable progress has been made to entrench its services. One of the critical areas which the committee welcomed was the review of the Property Valuation Act by the Ministerial Advisory Panel on Land Reform. The work has been completed and the Minister is considering the report. We envisage that the recommendations of this report will assist the department in implementing the just and equitable compensation when acquiring land for land reform and further clarify the mandate of the OVG. We welcome the commitment to ensure that critical and strategic positions are filled. It is doable, whatever they have planned on their APP, because already in 2019-20, its performance rating was 93%. In 2020-21, it improved to 100%. There's also a renewed focus to ensure that the number of days to issue evaluation certificate do not exceed 50, and to take less than 10 days to resolve queries after issuing a final valuation certificate. Honorable members, on the Ingonyama Trust Board, the biggest issue here, Honorable Kebekulu, is that the committee has agreed to address through oversight, visits, and engagements with the trust board and the trustee, as well as relevant stakeholders, is the purpose for which the trust was established, and whether communities were realizing the material benefits from the administration or management of their land. In terms of the challenges of ITB that me and you know from the committee, it is in respect of accountability and the budget deficit. DM Squatter has just indicated a plan for hosting a communal land tenure summit, which will involve diverse stakeholders. It will be therefore important that as and when the department deliberates upon the matter of customary land tenure, consideration be made on lessons learned from our experience, whether negative or positive, on the governance and the land administration of rural land, as we have seen with the Ngonyama Trust Board. Because what we are seeing could actually be multiple, if not exacerbated, when we transfer the land to traditional communities. Now, our engagement, Honorable Kebekulu, therefore, is stressing accountability, because as legislators, we want to protect the rights of individuals and communities, as according to Section 25C, on protecting the tenure security for all citizens. So it's not like we are being mean to ITB, but our responsibility is the protection of citizens, but also it's about enforcing accountability because of the public good in terms of resources allocated to the board. Now, Motlotlegi Briet, Botata has a ANC. Botata ke gore lona makoko khanetso le gana go amogela gore puso le lefapha di a dira ka matlole a mannye a ba fiwang. Diprograma di tshwana le namolo ya COVID-19, letlole la presidente la go tlhatlosa economy, your presidential economic stimulus initiative, tlhabololo ya didika kgotsa district development model, ke tse dingwe tseo di bontshang gore ANC e semagane le go fetola maphelo a batho. Coming to the Agricultural Research Council, our visit in Tshwane, members were exposed to some of the laboratory equipment in the biotechnology platform that is used in diagnostic and analytical services for stock theft, microgenetic traceability, rapid antigen tests, paternity tests, and so on. The ARC Agro-Processing and Medicinal Plants Unit, which is already contributing to the upliftment of small moringa growers in Limpopo, will play a crucial role in developing research towards implementation of the agricultural industry master plans. Other innovations include the plant and animal mobile clinics and a mobile abattoir that enable the ARC to reach remote areas for research on livestock, plant and biosystematics, as well as soil testing to address industry challenges. The efforts of the current board, which seems to have an intrinsic understanding of the ARC mandate and challenges, are acknowledged and appreciated. The task team that the board has established to address foot and mouth disease challenges is noted, and the committee should seek reports on its activities. The committee previously lamented instability in the executive management following the departure of the former CEO, and a new CEO has just been appointed since the 1st of April 2022. Honorable Swartz, we really appreciate the assistance by farmers to those in need during disaster. Theirs is a noble profession, and that is what we call private-public partnerships. And we really appreciate moving forward. We will continue to work with them, and they continue to help those that are destitute. Honorable members, our visit to underdeveloped biological products highlighted both positive and negative challenges that the institution is facing. What has been apparent from engagement on the entities APP and the oversight visit is that the challenges of OBP are complex and did not start in 2019, Honorable Masipa, or even 5 years ago, but have been going on for some time. We equally support the work that the board is doing in repositioning the institution. However, we know that there's still more work to be done in ensuring that there's adequacy in availability of vaccines, as well as the need for completion of the good manufacturing practice, the GMP project, as all of these are important in the support of our animal health system. Honorable Chairperson, the African National Congress support the vote 29 for the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I will now invite the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Rural Development and Land Reform to respond to the debate. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Mandibulele ngentetho yabo bonke ababe yingxenye yale nkulumo mpikiswano, ikakhulukazi wonke amalunga endlu nezincomo abazinikile. Kodwa ke kumele ndibonge ozakwethu amalunga kaKhongolose athe agxininisa ezintweni esizenzileyo nalezo zincomo zezinto ekumele sizenze ukuya phambili. Baba uchapha ngiyakwethembisa namalunga wonke ukuthi asizodlala endleleni sizoya apho sithunywe khona. Ngiyacela ke kusho ukuthi bakhona nina bekunene nalabo labakhuluma amampunge kungathi sebelibele ukuthi sivelaphi. Uma nje sikhuluma ngokwakhiwa kabusha kwalelizwe kumele sikhumbule ingcindezelo esibuya kuyo. Kwesinye isikhathi ngathi siyakhohlwa mhlambe kufuneka sikhumbutane kuthi kahle kahle vele masikhuluma ngale ngcindezelo isukaphi. Maye Nkosi yami 1652 kude kube imanje mudze kakhulu noma ungathi 1652 kufika ku1994 angathi ukuthi singathi sikhathi lesidze kangakanani kunale minyaka lengu28 yekutama buluhlengahlengisa kabusha sakhe sive. Kumele ke ninabekunene futhi ngisho ukuthi labo hulumeni basembili babebhekene kuphela netimfuno labaligcunswana. Sina nje labampisholo sasingadiwa nekuthi singebobani sikhohliswa nje kancane ukuthi naku kwentwa ama-agricultural corporation lokungembela kungesiko ukuthi kulekelelwa kwabalimi njengoba sitama kwenda kulesi sikhathi sanamuhla. Kumele ke sikhulume amaqiniso siwabheke. Ngiyabonga Nkosi yami ukuthi make stay ingathi nawe kube khona kuvuleka kwamehlo wakuvuma ngalomlomo wakho ukuthi kahle kahle vele besicinzezelwe la sivela khona. Kashe ke ngitakushiya kulo. It would be important for me to actually appreciate the role that had been played by members of the District 6, all the various stakeholders who have engaged with us as government in the development of their land as they have returned. On the 6th of May 22, many more beneficiaries returned to where they were forcibly removed after the City of Cape Town finally issued the occupancy certificate. I want to actually appreciate the role played by the Portfolio Committee in this regard, the Interministerial Committee on Land headed by Deputy President, but also the Department of Public Works for having walked the journey ensuring that that land is secured for the claimants. The City of Cape Town, led by our mayor, who was part of the members of this parliament, who also have been open to engaging with us to resolve the issue of occupancy certificate. It's nice to be part of a democratic state because even if we differ, we appreciate the contributions that others are making because the challenges of resolving South Africa's problems lie on all of us. Honorable Matthias, in your intervention, you actually reflected on a number of issues where in your view, you felt that nothing has been done. Some other members have also raised the issue from the opposition of the lack of political will. That cannot be far from the truth. The very fact that the ANC as a movement was central in the negotiation of the constitution of the country and its democratic dispensation, particularly to emphasize that the issue of land reform and bringing back the dignity of our people is central in the trajectory of transformation. That defines the political will. What we have been doing over the years, returning land to our people, at the same time, engaging those who took the land from our people, maybe not themselves directly, but the system that was in place ensured the dispossession of the majority of South Africans. We acknowledged their pain, and therefore we undertook to compensate, to ensure that there is no disruption and further conflict in our country. Which democratic state can ever do that, if not the ANC-led government? Honorable Tlebekulu, you've also indicated the importance of fast-tracking land reform. Yes, we agree. But I think when we talk about fast-tracking of land reform, we shouldn't be one-sided. We should equally make the same call to the landowners of this country, because more time gets spent in the negotiations on price. Some of the landowners even dispute the fact that there was any land dispossession. Honorable Steyn, Honorable Briet, I would actually want to take you to Melmoth. Understand how long it took us to resolve that claim, not because there was political will, but because persistent, refusal from landowners. There were few who actually acknowledged that we needed to go and ensure that they settlement. And that's why we celebrated last Saturday with 4 communities of Melmoth in this regard. But it's a journey that has been very long. And I think when we talk about these issues, we need to appreciate that fact. Honorable Mandela, Honorable Trete, Honorable Tapa, and Honorable Mankensi, you actually raised the importance of supporting agriculture, particularly those who have been given land. And I agree with you, because it is important that as we bring in new owners into the land that they were removed from, they are equally supported in order to make sure that they become successful. And it's important to appreciate that it will not be something overnight. We'll have to stay.
Your time is now expired.
Ensuring that they support. I therefore wish to thank all members for their participation in this debate, and to our farmers and agribusiness enterprises and the claimants at home for the good work that they've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, that concludes the debate and the business of this mini plenary. The mini plenary will now rise. Thank you.